Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. Today I'm going to give my thoughts and opinions on a topic I've been thinking about lately in DDO, and that topic is the state of healers or the healing role in DDO today. Before I get started, I want to let you know I apologize for any bad audio or gameplay footage quality. I'm on the road right now traveling, and I'm using a travel mic and a crappy laptop, so quality can't be helped. Apologize for that. But let's get back to the topic. The traditional heal bot build, or the healer, that's what most people think of when they think of a healer, is a heal bot, and that's what I wouldn't say it was ever the best build, because it definitely wasn't, but it was seen as it was a popular build back in the day. And it's something that a lot of people like to run because you could actually run a tune or a character that was spec'd only for healing, and it would be helpful and you would do well because people, especially melees, characters, especially melees, did not have great self-healing. Now, it wasn't the best way to build a divine back then. You should always build your divines. Even back then, you should have always built your divines to be able to do multiple things other than healing. But today, definitely building a heal bot is a terrible idea, and you shouldn't do that. So that build, that idea of a character that can only heal and that's all it does, is definitely dead. But healing itself is not dead. One of the other reasons you don't want to spec only for healing on a cleric is healing essentially comes free. So when you build a quote-unquote heal bot, a character that only heals and doesn't do anything else, you only gain a small advantage in healing, but you give up a monumental amount of DPS. So it's not worth the trade at all. That little extra healing that a heal bot might have over, say, a battle cleric or a caster cleric is not near worth that DPS. So it never was a good idea back then or today. It's just back then healing was so needed that you could get away with that type of build, and groups would accept you anyways because that healing was so valuable, even though you oftentimes were probably more trained than you were worth on the party because you weren't bringing any DPS. But let's move on to how can a healer be helpful in groups today. Now, me personally, I like to build my character, my cleric, with the thought of me backup healing in mind. Now, don't get me wrong. If I need to switch into full out heal bot mode for a raid, that's very rarely needed. But if it's needed that I focus more on healing, now I'm never going to be a straight heal bot even in a raid when I'm focusing on healing. But maybe in rare circumstances. But if I need to add on more healing, my point is I can do that. I can swap into, say, from Crusader, or I can swap from Dreadnought or Crusader to Divine Sentinel, Unyielding Sentinel, to get extra hit points, survivability, plus renewal. I can swap in SP and positive energy spell power, increasing twists. But generally in your quest, just your general questing, you don't want to take this attitude. You want to take the attitude that your healing is there to support the party. It's not a required, and it's not something you have to focus on. It's just there to make the quest a slightly easier and more convenient experience for everybody. Now, healing definitely becomes less valuable the more skilled the party is. And that's because there's less mistakes that you'll need to cover up with your heals when it comes to a experienced party. When it comes to experience, like really good players, they're generally going to have the hit points and the defensive ability to deal with the blows that monsters are going to be handing them without your aura having to soften it. One of the awesome things though about aura, and aura is always going to be useful in a good party or a weaker party, just that it will be more useful in a weaker party. But the good thing about aura is you can use it for constant procs, and this is one of the reasons I like running a battle cleric. The constant procs on the aura what they do is they'll effectively reduce the DPS of all the monsters in the dungeon, because with Aura proccing constantly around everyone the whole quest, they're effectively taking less damage, because any damage they do take is going to be supplemented by Aura ticks. So the whole group is getting a constant regen, or at least those that are in your Aura. And this is again is the reason I like running a Battle Cleric over a Caster Cleric. And this is why I personally think Battle Clerics are better healers than Caster Clerics. Now, any of you Caster Cleric, anyone who mains a Caster Cleric, don't go crazy in the comments or anything. But that's just my opinion, because Battle Clerics are going to more often be in the range of those characters that can take advantage of the healing, typically melee characters. Battle Clerics are usually up front, whereas casters hang in the back. So more characters are going to be in the range of Aura and Burst, and that's why Battle Clerics, in my opinion, are better healers, because they're more often in situations where their healing can be helpful, especially Aura and Burst. So Aura still holds a lot of value in groups. It may not be quote-unquote needed, but it definitely makes the run easier. Often you'll find that Aura on a cleric will allow you to pull weak parties through epically completions they couldn't get through otherwise, and that's one thing I've definitely noticed. Your healing, like I said, it effectively reduces the DPS of monsters in the dungeon, so this can let you allow parties to stay alive in DPS more than they would otherwise, and that can help you get through some epically completions. And the other thing about Aura, Aura, even though the healing may not be required, like I said, it softens the blow from monsters, but the other thing it does is it lets party members focus less on their own self-healing, and when in real time they're focusing less on their self-healing, that means they'll be able to spend more time on their own DPS. The other thing is that Aura, while it's never useless in any party, no matter what skill, because Aura will help party members save SP. So, say you're in a typical quest, even though the monsters might not be doing a lot of burst damage that really threatens you, if you're running a build with a low amount of SP, and the cleric Aura allows you to regen, that's less SP you have to spend on self-healing. So those builds can spend more SP on DPS and offense instead. So they're going to have more SP to spend on offense. They're also going to have more real time to spend on offense, because when any few seconds they're not standing there healing themselves, those are a few seconds they can be DPSing instead. So healing, while not quote-unquote needed, it can be a convenience that effectively both increases the DPS of your party and decreases the DPS of the monsters in the dungeon. You're going to give aura procs that are going to soften those monster blows, and you're going to allow party members to focus on their self-healing less, so they'll have more time to DPS the monsters. It's effectively increasing DPS. So even though Aura might be more effective in a skilled, a weaker party, it's still helpful to any party, even the most skilled parties, just not to the near the extent it would be in a weaker party. Let's talk about bursts for a minute. Bursts still hold value in a party. They can be quickened for free, and you can keep it on a hotkey, both for self-healing and party healing. And the good thing about bursts is they're free, and on a cleric, you usually have more than you know what to do with. Now, that's more in epics. I know, me personally, I have anywhere from like 23 to 26 or 7 turns, just depending on what charisma items I have on and what destiny I'm in. So the cool thing about bursts, because you have so many of them and they're free, they cost no SP, you can just hit them regardless without any concern, without having to be conservative with them. You can just keep one eye on the hotbars, and as soon as one drops low, you can just hit burst. You know, if the person's in range, they're going to get healed. If they're not in range and you waste the burst, no, who cares? You have way more burst and you know what to do with, so it doesn't matter. So you can use them really liberally like that. It allows you to have a kind of a laid back, flexible, non-conservative attitude with your bursts that other healers who power their healer types, who power their healing abilities through spell points, can't really look at it that way. They have to be a little more conservative, because any SP they waste on a heal, they could have instead used for DPS. And a lot of casters in general have to just be more conservative. Any healing casters, like say a druid or something, a caster druid has to be have a more conservative attitude, because like I said, any SP they waste on a heal that misses, they could have instead used for DPS. Now, one thing that I don't think the cleric, and I know I'm talking a lot about clerics, but that's just because that's the class that I play. A lot of this could apply to other classes as well, like favored souls or druids or bards. But one thing that healing today I don't think helps a lot with is spike damage. Spike damage is more or less on the party member who's taking the damage, because if we're talking spike damage like from stuff like Mark of Death or the Infighting Temple of Elemental Evil Part 2, if you're going to take like insane spike damage like that, you have to be responsible for your own self-healing, because the cleric oftentimes is not going to be able to react in time. So Aura and bursts really don't help a lot with that, although they can to an extent, just not a lot of the time. So no matter how good your positive energy spell power is, if someone's taking massive burst damage, it's more about how quickly you're able to react to that spike damage than how good of a healer your character is. And no one's going to be able to react faster to spike damage than the character who's actually receiving it. And that's why healers really have limited abilities to deal with spike damage. Okay, now let's talk about classes. And I know I've talked about cleric a lot here, but I wanted to talk a little bit about what class is the best for the healer today. Now, I personally think cleric is hands down the best. It's very biased of me. That's my opinion, and I think that because clerics can provide a passive benefit through aura that other classes can't. Now, druids can somewhat, because they have a lot of heal over time spells that can be helpful, but they can't really give the passive benefits to the extent that aura can. And other classes like favored soul have direct healing, so they don't have anything passive. Like favored souls have to be direct with their healing. So I don't think they're the best fit in the game today for a healer, because that SP again can be used for DPS instead, and it's just not as practical as the passive healing a cleric can provide today. So how should you build a healer today? As I said at the beginning of the video, you kind of want to approach it as a backup thing. You don't want to ever build a character with healing as the primary goal of your character. You always want to build DPS no matter what healing build you have. DPS is always going to be first, and that should be the same with any build in the entire game. You always want to build for DPS first, because DPS is really what matters in the game today. There are now support roles in getting away from healing now, even like crowd control wizards or like buffing bards. Those kind of builds really are not viable in epics today. Unfortunately, I hate to say that, but they aren't. It's just a better option to bring another DPS toon to your party than a support toon. The support typically that a dedicated support toon can bring isn't really worth what just another DPS toon could bring, giving that DPS up. So as a healer, when you build as a backup. You want to see kind of your role as a backup healer. You want to be there just to make the quest a more comfortable, a smoother experience. You don't want to look at your role as, hey, I'm the healer, I am filling health bars. You just want to look at it as, hey, it's everyone else's prerogative to heal their own health bars, but I'm going to be here to give you some nice passive healing to effectively reduce the DPS of monsters in the dungeon, to allow you to save some spell points, just to make the quest smoother and more convenient for everybody. Healer today, while they may not be required, can make hard runs easier. It can make difficult runs just hard. It can make hard runs easy. And the healer today is definitely not like it used to be perhaps in the early days of DDO, although I would think it would not. I would argue against that, and it's definitely, the healer is definitely not what it is in DDO as it is in other MMOs where you actually have to focus and be the healer. View a healer character more as a bonus to the group than your primary role. So guys, I know I threw a barrage of thoughts and opinions at you today. This is just a lot of healer thoughts that have been rolling around in my head all week, and I wanted to throw them out to you in this video. Let me know what you think about this topic. Leave your comments below. I'm interested to hear what people think about this. Also, as always, guys, leave me a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, if you found it entertaining or helpful. One announcement I want to make before I close out this video. Patrick from DDOcast was nice enough to invite me on an upcoming episode of his podcast. I believe it's coming out this weekend, but you'll have to check the website, ddocast.com, for the exact date. I don't know exactly when it'll be uploaded. I believe it's this weekend, but again, you'll have to check. I'll be joining Patrick along with Lessa from the Damsels of DDO, Samus, also they're from the DDO Cocktail Hour, and Chai, for a long discussion about all kinds of hot DDO topics in the game today. So be sure to check out DDOcast website, ddocast.com. I'll link below in the description for updates on that episode, and definitely give it a listen. Time to call this video a wrap. See you all next time.